Hello, Venom Fang X. This is my very first YouTube video, and it's in response to a video you made called Thunderfoot Serves Death. Now, this is actually a bit of an older video. It was made back in February, but I didn't have a YouTube account then, so I didn't respond to it. Which I could have if I had a YouTube account, and now I do, so I will. Okay, so basically, the part I'm responding to is the part where you're talking about washing hands, and how the Bible says washing your hands is good. And now we know washing your hands is good, so therefore the Bible said something about scientists, that science that we didn't know until very recently in our human history. Now that was, pretty handily dismantled by basically by saying that the thing about washing our hands was in a very long list of other traditions that were all completely moronic, like the cure for leprosy being birds and all that sort of fun stuff that just gets bandied about in the Old Testament. Now, you might have your own defenses about that, and that's your prerogative, but we don't really need to defend the fact that the washing the hands thing isn't in any way an indication that God is showing us to wash our hands, because it's actually good for us, and God knew this the whole time, because Jesus already shot that down in the book of Mark. In Mark chapter 7. This is the story in which Jesus basically shows that no food is unclean, and that all of those dietary restrictions that people got all worked up about are null and void. It's the reason that Christians laugh when people say, well, you get all worked up about homosexuality being an abomination, but shrimp's an abomination too. Christians say, no, it's not. Jesus showed that no food can make a man unclean. It is what happens from within. It is what is in a man's heart that makes him unclean. What leaves a man's body rather than what enters a man's body. Now, that's the apologetic. But let's look at the actual story, shall we? So I'm just going to read directly from it, because it's pretty concise. The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating foods with hands that were unclean, that is, unwashed. This is in brackets. The Pharisees and all the Jews that do not eat unless they give their hand a ceremonial washing, holding to the traditions of their elders. When they come to the marking place, they do not eat unless they wash, and they observe many other traditions, such as the washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. Now, that's actually to be honest, I'm surprised you didn't use this quote to talk about washing stuff, because that doesn't just cover washing hands, it covers kettles and washing dishes as well, and it's before eating, so hell, there's all sorts of, arguments you can make for this being something to prevent, it's something with a foreknowledge of germ theory, which hadn't been discovered yet. But I think I know why you didn't use this one, and that's because of what happens immediately after this. So the Pharisees and the teachers, quoting again, so the Pharisees and the teachers of the law asked Jesus, "Why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders, instead of eating their food with unclean hands?" Very good question. He replied, "Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are but rules taught by men. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to the traditions of men." So it says here that the stuff about washing your hands, this is about washing your hands before you eat, that is a tradition from man, not a law from God. Yeah. And this is Jesus rebuking them for asking him why he's not washing his hands before he eats. A little later on it says, "Again Jesus called the crowd to him and said, 'Listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a man can make him unclean by going into him. Rather, it is what comes out of a man that makes him unclean.'" Well, I understand in this case he's probably making a metaphor about sin, but still, considering that the lead-in was a man asking him why he hadn't washed his hands, this seems to completely refute germ theory. It says that basically it's what has a man's soul that makes him clean or unclean, and that external factors, like bacteria, have nothing to do with it, which we now know is blatantly untrue. Yeah, that's about it. See, here's the thing. I know that the latter part of this story is obviously meant as a teaching moment, as a, well, let's teach the people that these dietary laws aren't important anymore. The question of why they were made in the first place, if they were important, is a good question, but still, it seems like it's just a teaching moment. So I can understand why you might use that apologetic. But my question for you is, why aren't Jesus' followers washing their hands? I mean, I understand that the Pharisees have a bunch of traditions that Jesus isn't happy about, and he wants them to be chucked in favor of the actual faith in God part, which is what he's all about. That's Jesus' thing. But out of all of the traditions to get rid of, washing your hands is a pretty stupid one to pitch, especially if you think the Bible is a wellspring of scientific foreknowledge. The Bible isn't a wellspring of scientific knowledge. Most of the stuff it says about science is wrong. And this is one of those things. So when you're asked to provide an example of how the Bible predicts scientific advancement, don't start with people washing their hands. It's a bad move. To sum up, basically what I'm saying is that it's pretty obvious that what the Bible does say about washing our hands, it's more of an ancillary thing. It's something that God tells you to do in addition to other things to atone for sins. It's purely a spiritual thing. And it's, when it is espoused as something that people should do rigorously before every meal, something that, scientists propose now in order to prevent death, God gets pissed and tells people to stop it. God only likes it when people wash their hands when he tells them to. And as such, it's not so much about the hand washing as it is listening to God's commands. So yeah, in short, Jesus doesn't wash his hands. Neither should you. And if your mom tells you otherwise, then she's a dirty blasphemer. And thank you. Goodbye. This has been The Avenging Eyebrow, signing off.